Peace and love, family, and welcome back to another Sunday Hope and Healing session. As every Sunday, we're here at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, bringing you that which is intended and designed to bring inspiration, encouragement, hope, things that will hopefully help to optimize your life for you, from things that I found helpful for me over my life journey, and I feel inspired and inclined to kind of give back, if you will. And we do that through words that I share, but also we do it through actual healing. Healing that we utilize a methodology referred to as Transcending the Matrix to utilize. Transcending the Matrix is a holistic based approach to healing that addresses every area of a person's life. It endeavors to not just treat the symptom, but actually get to the root cause and address issues from the root cause. And so last week we were focusing on eliminating it from a conceptual standpoint, eliminating the parasites in your mind. If you've not seen that video, I definitely encourage you to go back and check out the video on eliminating parasites from in your mind that was last week, broadcast from LA. It was less than a half hour, so we didn't get into the actual healing itself. It was a little bit more of a teaser or an intro, kind of sharing some things with you conceptually. And I said that this week we'd actually be getting into the business of doing the healing. Okay. And so, as promised, we're here, and that's what we're doing today. We're focusing on eliminating the parasites in your mind, part 2, and we're going to get into the actual healing. We're going to actually do healing to help eliminate the parasites from your mind. Now, again, I'll kind of touch on some of the things this week as far as parasites in your mind and how they work. And how a lot of the things that you're doing, a lot of your thoughts and behaviors aren't yours, where you're really being run and controlled by parasites, some literal, some figurative. But the goal, the endeavor is for us to all enter into a sustainable state of supreme satisfaction. The goal is for us to all be free. Right? To be free, to be the fullness of joy and love and peace and empowerment that we were designed to be and express as, right? Okay. And so I kind of touched on how there are things that a parasite can cause its host to behave in ways that it normally wouldn't. Okay, so a parasite, just to kind of rehash, a parasite is I'll say an entity that feeds off of a host. It needs some other living entity to draw its life energy from. Okay, and the way that works is it benefits from you, but gives no value back to you. It actually sucks the life out of you, it's a succubus. It sucks the life out of you so that it can have life for itself. Okay. And, I just kind of touched on how there are parasites that infect things that cause that will take over its mind. And an example, I'll kind of touch on a couple of little examples of that. One example is, I'll talk about 2 examples. One example is the horsehair worm. The official name is the Brokenness formicanus. Okay, and how it operates, it's a parasite that infects the praying mantis. Okay. Greetings, Curly Conscious King. Good to see you in the space, brother. This is how it works. It starts off in the water is larvae in the water. And then insects that hang around the water, like mosquitoes, flies, perhaps dragonflies, other insects that hang around the water, will eat the larva, and then the praying mantis eats that particular thing, the fly, the whatever. Greetings, Cass. Good to see you as well. And then the larvae end up growing and maturing inside the body of the praying mantis. Okay. Now, the way that the praying mantis operates, the praying mantis is a land insect. It's not an aquatic insect. It's a land insect. It doesn't go in the water. That's not its nature to go in the water. If it's hanging out in the water, it puts itself in a position of drowning. Okay. But the thing about this horsehair worm, this parasite that infects the praying mantis, is for it to continue its life cycle, it has to basically lay its babies in the water. That's where it passes on its next generation, is in the water. So it actually takes over the mind of the praying mantis and causes the praying mantis to go into the water and drown. And then it removes itself from the praying mantis and lays its eggs, so that those larvae then end up being eaten by the aquatic insects, the insects that hang around the water, and then they end up being ingested by another praying mantis, and so the cycle goes. But the key thing that I want you to understand is the praying mantis is not trying to go to the water by itself. It is against the best interest of the praying mantis to go to the water, but it does. It does, because that's where the horsehair worm needs to be released. And so it takes over the mind of the praying mantis to cause the praying mantis to go into the water, resulting in its own drowning in most cases, so that it can be released into the water, so it can lay its eggs that will then be eaten by some other insect that will then be eaten by the praying mantis, that will give its a good environment for the horsehair worm to grow and to mature. And then when it's ready to lay eggs again, it leads the praying mantis, the next praying mantis, into the water. Okay. Now that's one example of how something that's eaten and a parasite is gained, and then its mind is controlled by the parasite that has been matured in one's body, and had its mind kind of taken over. Now, another example I want to give is something that happens with ants. It's sometimes the common term for it is the zombie ant fungus. The scientific, if I can try to get the scientific name right, Cordyceps unilateralis. Okay. And so sometimes we just go by cordyceps for short. Now, the way it works, it operates very differently. This is actually a fungus that's a parasite. Okay. And so there are these spores that are released from the fungus, a tremendous amount of spores that are released from the fungus, and then they make their way to the ant. They land on the ant and then actually burrow into the ant's head and then take over the mind of the ant. It's so interesting how this happens. Now, ants are extremely community-based. They're very communal in nature. And so ant colonies can be very large, and the way that ants operate, you don't see like ants hanging out by themselves, just doing their own thing. Now, there may be an ant and the different ants have their own job and their own function, their own responsibility. Have you seen the animated film Ants? I can encourage you to check it out if you haven't already. But they all have their they're given responsibilities. Some have to go and scope a place out and see, if there's food available, or if it might be a good place to build a home or something of that nature. Greetings, Karen. And so what happens is they may, go to scope a place out, scout something out real quick, but then they're coming back. They're coming back to the colony. They're coming back, communicating this is a good spot. And then, the colony makes its trek there. But they operate very much in concert with one another. Okay. They pick up on the smell of the pheromones that they leave behind. And, I've seen situations where ants have created bridges. The bridge is made of ants. They create bridges to get from one place to another, and they're doing it off of each other's bodies. There are a lot that humans can learn from how well ants work together. Okay. They're never trying to go solo. They're never trying to go rogue. Okay. However, when an ant is infected by this cordyceps, it actually takes over the mind of the ant, and it causes it to behave in a very different way than that ant would normally behave. It doesn't engage in a communal way for the greater good of the ant colony anymore. What it does, and ants for the most part live on the ground or close to the ground, and that's where they hang out. But the cordyceps, they'll take over the mind of the ant and the nervous system of the ant, and cause the infected ant, to go to a high place in a tree where an ant would not normally go. That fungus needs to go to a high place in the tree for it to be able to grow. And what it will do is it will lead the ant up to a high place in that tree and cause it to bite down on a thin branch, what they call a death grip. Okay, the ant would not normally do this. It'll bite down on a thin branch or a twig or a leaf or something, locking its jaws in this what's referred to as a death grip. And what it will do is that will be the place where it will spend its last moments alive, because the cordyceps will actually grow from the head of the ant, and the ant will essentially become this fungal plant. And then the spores it needs to be high so that the spores will be distributed to as many and land on as many ants as possible, because that's how a parasite of this sort operates. Really, all living things seek to continue to live. It's kind of inbred in all of us. And so it is with the horsehair worm. And so it is with the zombie ant fungus. Okay, they're designed to actually take over the mind of their host, to ultimately kill the host, and then set themselves up to create future generations for themselves. Now, how does that relate to you and I as human beings? The way that it relates to us is because there are things that we take in, and some of them are things that we've ingested, right? Some of them are things that we've taken into our body temple in the things that we've eaten. For instance, I mentioned before, when you're having sugar cravings, it's not you that's craving the sugar, it's the parasites living in your body that are craving the sugar, and they're making you think that you want the sugar. If you want to get off of sugar, getting off the sugar is the best way to do it, because then you lose your appetite for it. I'm speaking as someone who has historically had a tremendous sweet tooth. I did not have the ability to compute this sentence that I would sometimes hear people utter, saying that something was too sweet. Like, how is that? That makes no sense. That's like water being too wet. I mean, does not compute. My brain couldn't fathom the concept of too sweet, or the parasites in my body at least couldn't comprehend this concept of too sweet. I understand that very clearly now, though. And I don't eat sweets the way that I did, and thus don't have the cravings the way that I did. But one way that we can get uh, parasites is the things that we ingest, the food that we actually eat. And it can also be the things that we take in, what we partake of, not just through the oral cavity, but through the other gates of consciousness, through our eye gates, through our ear gates. And what happens is that there are things that that we see and that we hear, or things that we feed upon in terms of our consciousness, um, that then infect us with some type of parasite, literal or figurative. Now, such is the case with the ants. The ants aren't ingesting the zombie ant fungus. They are actually subject to this parasite as a function of their environment. Are you piecing together what I'm saying to you today? We can, as a function of what we are partaking of, as well as a function of the environments that we find ourselves in, we put ourselves in a position to where we are receptive, not consciously so necessarily, but where we have put ourselves in a position to take on things that will feed off of us, take life energy from us, and destroy us in the process. Now, we can refer to this as energy vampires that we might find ourselves interacting with, folk that want to suck the life energy out of us and don't give anything back, don't have compassion for the way that we're negatively affected by their toxicity. In fact, take pride and pleasure sometimes in destroying us. I remember hearing a person one time say that they likened themselves, that they wanted to fashion themselves after Delilah in the Bible. Delilah is known in the Bible as the person who was responsible for Samson losing his power. Okay. Like, I remember talking with the person, and this person wanted to be a woman who sucked the power out of men and left them as a shell of themselves. That's not healthy. It's not healthy for the person being that way. It's not healthy for the person who's experiencing that type of parasitic behavior. But in general, a parasite isn't something that you want in your body. It's not something that you want in your mind. Now, as we said last week, the mind isn't just the brain. The mind exists within every cell of your body. Similar to the ants in a colony, all the cells in the body have their own job, their own function, their own responsibility, and then they're all to be for the greater good of the entire body itself. Okay. And when we get certain diseases, cancer is a perfect example. It's a function of parasites in the body fighting against the greater good of the body. Okay. And so there are parasites in our minds that we experience as manifesting in a way that leads us 180 degrees from our highest and best good. And so we're going to, via some healing today, work on eliminating the parasites in our minds. Okay. So if you would like to experience a greater degree of freedom in your life, if you want to, and the interesting thing about it is, a lot of times we're being controlled by forces that we don't even know are controlling us. I remember having a conversation when I was working in the school system years ago, decades ago, talking with the young people about the music that they were listening to. They thought it was a choice that they were making. And in reality, it was what they were programmed to listen to. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole where that's concerned, but what I do want to address is that a lot of times there are decisions that we make. There are certain appetites that we have, whether we're talking about certain food choices, or whether we're talking about who we're attracted to romantically. A lot of those things are based on some things that are going on inside of us that are not for our highest and best good. some manifestation of a parasite wreaking havoc in our lives. And so our goal here is to become free of that, So we're going to do a healing towards that end. So I'm going to start with a prayer. If you would like to receive some benefit from this healing, I certainly encourage you and invite you to join in with this. If you know of somebody else that you feel would be of benefit, this would be of benefit to, please share it with them as well. You know, I mentioned about, and especially with the case with this zombie ant fungus. I'm not going to try to pronounce the name of the cordyceps. I'll just leave it at that. Like, they try to get as much spread as they possibly can. And so it is with forces that work against the greater good. But so it is also with those of us who are in the light, who are wanting to spread and share love and goodness. I'm telling you, people, your life is better when you're interacting with more enlightened people. Just point blank. Your life is better when there are more people operating from a place where they're healed of their brokenness. And so that's why I'm doing this, what I do. And if you feel inclined to share, and I want to encourage you to share so that other people can get the benefit of this too. Okay. So let's go ahead and get into the prayer. God, I know you to be a healer, the supreme healer, the healer of all things, that there's nothing beyond your healing capability. And God, I also bear witness to the fact that you've blessed me with the tremendous opportunity of being able to demonstrate you as a healer. And I offer myself for that purpose at this time, on the behalf of all who state their name right now, whether out loud or silently, as well as all whose names are being spoken of by someone who cares about them right now, for the purpose of neutralizing the root cause of all parasites in the mind of all of us, in whatever forms they may take, from the point of the causal root in the entire energetic field of every strand of DNA and every cell of each one of our bodies, as well as all cumulative effects thereof, and transmuting that into and replacing it with a divine tonic, a spiritual tonic that allows us to dwell in a state of true freedom to be and express limitless joy, divine well-being, perfect peace, and wholeness, in a way that all of the cells of our body are working together for the greater good. And we, as individuals in a greater body of life, might also, in all of our thinking, saying, being, and doing, work toward the greater good of all humanity and all of life. And I bear witness to our wholeness on this date and in this time and space called now. Thank you. Thank you, God, for this gift of your divine love. It is done. It is done. It is done. Hey, Reverend Shahira, good to see you in this space today, and love and light to you also. All right, so let's get into the healing. And so, as I gave these two examples earlier, one, parasites in your mind that may have gotten there as a result of that which you have intaken, that which you have eaten, whether you have physically eaten or whether you have taken in through your eyes or through your ears. Okay. And so let's address the toxicity within us that makes us attracted to that in the first place. Okay. And a lot of times the toxicity that is in us that makes us attracted to that which is toxic. The truth of the matter is that which is toxic cannot enter into you unless you're vibrating in that frequency. Okay. And so let's actually just do a general shift from operating in a place of toxicity to operating in a place of tonicity. So everything in life is either toxic or tonic. Everything in life is either for your detriment or for your good. And so we want to actually do just a general overall shift in consciousness to move towards and partake of that which actually removes that which would cause you harm and bring in that which causes you good. Okay, so let's strengthen us all for that. Okay, making its way to all of the cracks and the crevices within our consciousness, including those places that we've buried, especially those places that we've buried deep down inside of us from things that we're not even consciously aware of anymore. Okay. All right. Now let's look at, I want to look at just with respect to the consciousness of humanity at this particular point in time where we find ourselves in now, where the toxic is almost the norm, because throughout our culture and our society, there's just been this infestation of these parasites that have been running rampant. We don't even recognize that they're there, and yet they're impacting our lives. Okay. All right. So I want to deal with that on a figurative level, and also want to deal with it on a biological level. Okay. So let's actually create an optimized gut health. So like roughly 3/4 of your immune system operates in your gut, because that which you take in is frequently the cause of what sickness and dis-ease ends up manifesting in your life. Okay. All right. So let's actually increase the strength of the that which would be the healthy gut bacteria. There's bad bacteria and there's good bacteria. To increase that so that it's actually effectively getting rid of that which doesn't belong in your body, in your physical body temple. Okay. And increasing its efficacy. And I want to say optimizing the light quotient in your gut. Optimizing the light quotient in your gut. Okay, so all sickness, all dis-ease is a darkness, if you will. A darkness isn't a thing unto itself, it's just merely the lack of light. Okay. So we're going to optimize the light quotient in your gut. Okay. So that your gut is smarter, operating more effectively, more efficiently. Let's increase that gut efficiency. Okay. All right. Now there's an aspect of your mind that is resistant to that which is healthy for you. Yeah, guess what? There's an aspect of the praying mantis's mind that resists what's good for it too, and causes it to go in the water and end up drowning itself, so that the parasite that was controlling it can be released and lay its eggs. Let's actually free us from that and strengthen us to be able to see what the thing actually is. Okay, to be able to distinguish what our own thoughts are, what our own mindset is, to be able to distinguish that from an external force that is controlling us, if you will, controlling our thoughts, controlling our mind. Sometimes it's what we ingest, and sometimes it's a result of the environment that we find ourselves in. The environment that we find ourselves in can sometimes result in trauma for us. And so let's address some of that trauma from the point of the root cause. And the first thing that's coming up is actually sexual trauma. So to actually transmute that sexual trauma, bring love, the pure love and divine light of God into the place where that sexual trauma has been held. The place in your body where that's been held. Bring in the pure love and divine light of God into that place. And the places in your mind where there's the fear and the pain. And maybe some walls have been put up. You want to bless that space with God's love and God's compassion and God's peace and God's comfort and God's safety. We all should be able to feel safe in our own bodies. We should all be able to feel safe in our own minds. Okay. And so there's a scripture, there are several different scriptures. I won't go quoting a bunch of them right now because I don't want to go down that rabbit hole either. I want to put the focus on the healing. But there are several scriptures that speak to being in the presence of God, being a safe space, that we're safe in the presence of God. We're safe in the arms of God. That the name of the Lord is a strong tower and the righteous run into it and are safe. There are a lot of different ones that speak to the presence of God being a place where we can be safe. And sometimes we've had religious trauma that cause us to perceive God as being vengeful and angry and wanting to punish us. Okay, there's a difference between punishment and discipline. There's also a scripture that speaks to the fact that if you think that God's wanting to punish you, it's because you don't quite understand perfect love. Okay, and so we want to actually bring in a receptivity to the perfect love of God, wash away all of the false belief systems that cause you to think that you have to meet certain criteria to be loved, and to wash away very significantly any belief systems that make you think that you have to reach a certain standard of perfection to warrant God's love or God's affection or God being pleased with you. Okay, we want to replace that with infusing into your consciousness the idea of, not just the idea, but the reality of no matter what, you deeply and completely love and accept yourself exactly as you are, while simultaneously endeavoring to be the best version of yourself you can possibly be, but loving yourself deeply and completely exactly where you are right now. Okay, so let's infuse that. Okay, now for that, let's get into the things that you may have heard, not just in religious settings, certainly in religious settings, but also things that you heard growing up as a child, or things or situations where you've seen, I feel led actually to go into another place referred to as psychic trauma. Okay. Where there's trauma that people experience that you may not have necessarily experienced directly, but you're still connected to it. Okay. And when I say psychic trauma, I'm not talking about something that you experienced at the hands of a person that wears the title of a psychic. The psychic actually comes from the word psyche. Psychology comes from the word psyche, which we usually think about in terms of mentality, but psyche actually means soul. The real truth of what psychology at its heart is supposed to be is the study of the soul. Okay. And so there are areas wherein we are tuned in to other people who are currently living, people in other points in history, where we can be tapped into their joy as well as be tapped into their pain. I've heard of people, I've never been to the Colosseum in Rome, but I've heard of people going to the Colosseum in Rome and feeling the tragedy that took place there, in the gladiator times. I've never been to Gory Island, but I've spoken with people who've been there, where those who were in the process of getting ready to be shipped from the continent of Africa in slavery to the Americas and the Caribbean islands, right? This took place centuries ago, but people can still feel the psychic energy, if you will, the torment of those souls who are going through that. Okay, so let's actually address this, not just in terms of our own healing, but going back to be able to bring healing within the lives of those souls who went before and who endured, such hardship. Okay. All right. And that dealing with things where there was religious persecution, that dealing with things where there was gender-based persecution, dealing with areas where there was status-based persecution. I want to resolve that. Areas where there was ethnic-based persecution. Okay, all of these are getting better. Okay. There's persecution based on sexual orientation. We want to resolve that. Okay. All right. Persecution based on holding different ideology. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So we want to actually give thanks for the infusion of love and light, not only in terms of us, but even going back in time to those who actually endured it. Okay. All right. Now let's look at, there's this saying, there's this idea that we inherit sickness and disease sometimes, right? I'm just going to use the term brokenness. There are ways in which it can be said that we inherit brokenness. Not exactly, but we do learn certain patterns and we continue those patterns. Those patterns can continue in a family or a group of people, in a certain area until those patterns are broken. And so let's actually strengthen all of us to actually be able to create a newer, healthier pattern, or newer, healthier patterns that promote life rather than patterns that promote same old, business as usual. All right. And so let's actually, I'm thinking about that, the cordyceps and how they spread and infect, the ants, so that the ants will then put them in a position to cause the cordyceps to be able to multiply more and more exponentially. Okay, now I want to actually infuse us with the ability to actually be able to infuse others with more love and with more light, with more peace, with more wholeness, with more well-being. I know I want to be operating in a space where people just being in my presence end up experiencing healing. Right? Let's strengthen us all for that, for you being able to give off a level of love and light and vibrational frequency such that other people receive healing, receive blessings, just being in your presence. That there's toxicity that falls off of them just by being in your presence. That there's sadness and depression that falls off of them just by being in your presence. Okay. That there are photons of light that just fall off of you and sprinkle into the air like fairy dust into the atmosphere and land on the folk that come into your vicinity and end up having that grow within them, right? And then that spreading. Ooh, this is something I can get excited about. All right. Okay. All right. So let's actually strengthen our ability to reproduce, light, to reproduce love, and to reproduce environments and communities where love is the order of the day, where light is the natural frequency, where growth is inspired and inspiring others to grow more, to love more, to live more fully, right? Whew, this is some delicious stuff to me right now. Listen, if you can take in parasites from what you eat and from the environment that you find yourself in, guess what? That's not just true of parasites, people. That's true of the good stuff too. I want you to get some of this good and spread it so that other people can get it too. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm about. Let's do this. Can you get excited about it? I'm getting excited about it. I'm sitting in this chair. I got my feet kind of pinned underneath the part of the chair just to keep me in my seat. I wanted to get up and run around a little bit. All right, so let's actually strengthen our neural receptors to actually be able to align with the frequency of enthusiasm of spreading health, wealth, light, and love. Woo! I am feeling this right now. I'm feeling this right now. I'm even starting to perspire. I'm getting warm and stuff. Okay. All right. So right now, let's actually put some emphasis on optimizing our own spiritual potency. Optimizing our own spiritual potency and our own spiritual immunity. Our own spiritual immunity so that other things don't affect us so easily, so that we don't get bent out of shape so easily, so that other people aren't able to control our emotions so easily, so that we're not so easily influenced by other things outside of ourselves that may not have our best interests at heart. And to be able to increase our spiritual potency, come on now, increase our spiritual potency so that we actually are able to have a greater impact in the world than those things that are spreading the negativity, right? You get it in the media, you get it in the music industry, you get it the way that education is being manipulated. You know, you get it through the companies that are trying to, you know, optimize their bottom line, but they're actually feeding people stuff that's toxic to them. Let's strengthen this. If they're operating and they've got the backing of all of this money and influence and all of that, let's increase and optimize our spiritual potency so that the love and the light that we're putting out into the world is able to counteract that, and not only do it in a way that seems like it's fighting against what these other forces are doing, but in a way that it isn't even about that. It's just about the joy of living and loving and operating from a state of freedom that is inspiring to others, that's inspiring to others, so that what others breathe in, to be inspired is to take in spirit. And so to be able to operate in a way where we're flowing in so much love and joy that people are able to see that and they want to get what it is that we've got. Jesus talked about letting your light so shine that other folks see your good works and want to glorify your Father in heaven. That's the way that it's kind of worded, you know, with the patriarchal language in the Bible. But what it's really getting at is for us to be operating in a space of the goodness of God in such a way that other people see what we've got and they'll say, I'll have what she's having. I'll have what he's having as well. Thank you very much. And so that's how we want to be able to operate, where this little light of ours, we're letting it shine, and other people are being inspired by it. They're breathing it in, just being in our presence, and then they're getting some healing in the process. They're getting some transformation in the process. They're feeling lighter and feeling more loving and more joyful in the process. All right? Let's infuse us with that. All right, so that it's actually making its way to all of the areas in people's lives where they can use a little inspiration, where they can use a little love, where they can use a little light. Okay, and that it's oozing out of us, not in a way that leaves us feeling tapped and drained, but in a way that actually fuels us even more, you know, where the more light we give out, the more light we take in, where the more love we give out, the more love comes back to us. And it creates this positive feedback loop, right? Creates a positive feedback loop that is self-sustaining. Because what we're talking about anyway, what this whole thing is dealing with anyway, is us entering into a sustainable state of supreme satisfaction. What some might call enlightenment, what some might call liberation, what some might call salvation, it's all speaking to the same thing. That's being in a sustainable state of supreme satisfaction, not based on us getting this or having this, but it's self-sustaining, and it's not a temporary thing, but it's a permanent thing. And it's not quasi happy, quasi satisfied, but supremely satisfied. I'm feeling my help coming on right now, people. And I'm not just saying this in a performative way. I'm actually feeling what I'm saying, and I just can't hold it in and keep it to myself right now. Okay, but I do want to kind of stay focused. It's already 1:50, and I want to keep this under an hour if I can help it. So we're going to make just a couple more corrections for a little bit more healing to be able to happen. Okay. And one of the things that I want to address right now, just real quickly, is turning on, creating new neural pathways in the brain that are infused with creativity and self-replication to be able to come up with witty ideas that actually support our well-being and strengthen us for greater joy and empower us to actually be able to utilize, to be able to take control of our own minds, to be able to direct our mind. What's the name of that book? I can see the guy. It's probably the world's most well-known prosperity book. I'm trying to think of the name of it. Think and Grow Rich. What was his name? What was the Think and Grow Rich guy's name? If you can think of it, write it down. If you're in the room with me, feel free to say it out loud. Napoleon Hill. Thank you, sweetheart. Looking cute over there. Napoleon Hill, you know, I remember him talking about how he wouldn't pray for wealth. You know, he would essentially say, thank you, Cass. Cass put it down in the chat as well, Napoleon Hill. He'd say, I don't ask for more wealth, but I ask for the wisdom with which to use rightly the powers gifted me at birth of being able to direct my mind towards whatsoever end I choose, right? And that may not have been verbatim, but it's really the essence of it. So to be able to strengthen us, to be able to take control of our minds, to be able to direct our minds in a way that actually brings about the manifestation of our highest and best good. Okay, because whatever it is that we're thinking about and we're feeling about is what it is that we're going to end up bringing about in our lives. So I want to strengthen all of us to be able to maximize our own mind control because we're free to do so in a way that directs our thoughts and our mental energies and our emotional flow to actually be able to operate in a flow state so that we're directing our energies, because energy does follow consciousness. That is a scientific law. That we're able to direct it in a way that actually supports our well-being and gives us further evidence of other good things unfolding in our lives that we can celebrate. And that also creates this positive feedback loop that ends up being self-sustaining, right? The more of that good energy we're putting out there, the more fruit we're able to have of that good energy. The more fruit there is, the more seeds that there are that can be planted. The more seeds are planted, the more bountiful harvest you have. I'm getting excited. I feel my help coming on. I could go on and on, but I'm not going to today. All right. We're going to do one more thing. And that is, I'm going to invite everybody right now, wherever it is that you are, whatever it is that you are, wherever it is that you are physically, wherever it is that you are at this point in your life. I want you to just, in this moment, wherever you feel like you can use more, whether it's more health, more money, more love, whatever it is. I just want to invite you wherever it is that you're feeling some lack and not enough, or where it is that you're already feeling an abundance or just want more. I want you to just invite the light of God's love into that space within you right now. Invite the light of God's love to that space in you right now. And from this place, God, I thank you for the healing that's taking place today. Thank you for bringing us to a state of being a bit more free, a bit more whole, a bit more fully ourselves. And for this, we can't help but to just dwell in a state of awe about your goodness and how you continually open up doors for blessings. And the more healed we become, the more whole we become, the more we feel inclined to walk through those doors. Thank you for that blessing as well. And Hashem Yeshua HaMashiach Ashe and Amen. Oh, beloved, it's been a blessing being here with you today. I have enjoyed our time together immensely. I hope that you have too. If you've gotten something out of this, soak it up for everything that it's worth. Soak it up for everything that it's worth. If you feel like somebody else will benefit from it, remind yourself that the more whole you are, the more you're operating in a space of love and light, the more photons of light you are infusing your being with, the more other people enter your presence get to be lightened and get to be blessed and get to operate from a space of greater wholeness. I'm glad you enjoyed it today, Cass. And guess what? When more folk around you are operating from a place of lightness and you're operating from a place of lightness, it's just more joy. It's just more love. It's just more unity and togetherness and well-being. That blesses you and blesses the other folks as well. Greetings, my Tuskegee fam. It's good seeing you in the space today. Anyway, that wraps us up for today. If you're not already subscribed to the Matrix Healing YouTube channel, I certainly encourage you to. It's Matrix Healing, one word. I certainly encourage you to. If there is a particular topic that you'd like for me to deal with on the Sunday Hope and Healing sessions, then feel free to put that in the comments. If you're on Facebook and commenting, I'll still be able to see that. Although they do delete them after 4 weeks on Facebook now. All the lives on Facebook are deleted after 4 weeks. It will stay on, it will actually stay on whatchamajiggy, YouTube. The thing is, I only see it on YouTube if it's posted once the video is published, once it's no longer live. Definitely glad that you're feeling the healing shift. Zali, my brother, I love you much. Many blessings to you and to all of us who've been here today. And as we continue to endeavor to enter into that sustainable state of supreme satisfaction, until we meet again, I bid you adieu with peace and love. Catch you next time.